Automation creates one of the most dangerous illusions in business. It looks like progress before it produces results. Something has been connected. A workflow has been built. A trigger has been configured. A sequence starts running without manual effort. From the outside, this feels like maturity. The business appears more structured. Operations appear more efficient. The team feels like it is saving time. But automation does not improve a process by default. It only removes human intervention from it. And that difference matters. Because if the process is unclear, automation does not create clarity. If the process is unstable, automation does not create reliability. If the process produces weak outcomes, automation does not create better ones. It simply makes the same behavior happen faster, more consistently, and often with less visibility. This is why automation can become dangerous. Manual work contains friction, but friction has one advantage. It exposes weakness. When a person performs a task manually, problems remain visible. Steps get questioned, exceptions get noticed, delays become obvious. Confusion is easier to detect. Automation changes this. Once a process is hidden inside a system, the business stops seeing each step directly. The output is still visible, but the quality of the process becomes harder to observe. That means bad logic can run quietly. A weak handoff can repeat automatically. A wrong condition can trigger repeatedly. A poor decision rule can spread error at scale. And because the system appears to be working, the problem is often detected late. This is why automation should never be treated as the first solution to operational inefficiency. Speed is not the first objective. Clarity is. A business should automate only after it understands what is happening, why it is happening, and which parts of the process deserve to remain fixed. Without that foundation, automation becomes a way to lock confusion into place. It gives instability a structure. It gives inconsistency a rhythm. It gives fragile operations a polished surface. And that polished surface is what misleads people. They think the system is improving because the work is moving. But movement is not the same as control. A process becomes stronger only when automation removes effort without removing understanding. That is the real standard. Not whether something can be automated, but whether it should be. The reason automation is introduced too early is easy to understand. Manual work feels expensive. It takes time. It depends on attention. It creates repetition. And repetition creates fatigue. At a certain point, the business starts looking at the manual layer as the problem itself. But manual work is not always the problem. Very often, manual work is the last visible layer of a deeper structural issue. The task feels slow because the decision behind it is unclear. The process feels repetitive because the criteria were never defined properly. The handoff feels inefficient because ownership was never made explicit. Automation is then used as a shortcut, not to improve a proven process, but to avoid thinking about an unstable one. This is where businesses make an expensive mistake. They automate around ambiguity. And ambiguity does not disappear inside a system. It becomes embedded. Once embedded, it starts producing the same confusion at scale. The output may look faster. The team may touch the task less often. But the weakness is still there. In many cases, it becomes harder to correct. A manual process can be interrupted easily. A person can stop, ask a question, notice something unusual, and adapt. Automation does not do that on its own. It follows logic. And logic only works when the logic is sound. That is why readiness matters more than enthusiasm. A business is not ready for automation when it is simply tired of doing something manually. It is ready when the work has become predictable enough that human judgment is no longer improving the outcome. That distinction is critical. If manual intervention still adds quality, still catches mistakes, still protects context, automation is premature. It may reduce effort, but it will also remove intelligence from the process. And once intelligence is removed too early, the business starts compensating somewhere else. More monitoring, more corrections, more exceptions, more internal checking. In that scenario, automation does not reduce operational load. It relocates it. The work disappears from one place and reappears in another, often in a less visible form. This is why automation should be evaluated through a harder question. Not, can this be automated? But, what exactly is human judgment still protecting here? If the answer is unclear, the process is not ready. Because automation only helps when it removes effort from stable logic. If it removes effort from unstable logic, it turns uncertainty into a system. Automation becomes useful when it stops replacing effort blindly and starts protecting consistency deliberately. That happens only under specific conditions. The first is trigger clarity. A process should not start because someone happens to remember it. It should start because a clear condition has been met. A request arrives. A form is completed. A status changes. A deadline is reached. If the trigger is vague, automation creates confusion immediately. Things happen too early, too late, or for the wrong reason. The second condition is input quality. Automation assumes the information entering the process is reliable enough to act on. If inputs are incomplete, inconsistent, or context-dependent, the automated step becomes fragile. It may run exactly as designed, yet still produce the wrong result. That is not a software problem. It is a design problem. The third condition is decision stability. Some work feels repetitive, but still depends on judgment. That distinction matters. A task can happen often, without being suitable for automation. Frequency alone is not enough. The question is whether the same input should produce the same response most of the time. If the answer is yes, automation may help. If the answer is no, human judgment is still doing essential work. The fourth condition is output definition. An automated process must lead to an outcome that can be evaluated clearly. Something is sent. Something is assigned. Something is updated. Something is escalated. If success is ambiguous, automation becomes difficult to trust. And if it cannot be trusted, teams start checking it manually anyway. At that point, the business has not removed work. It has duplicated it. Another important condition is exception frequency. Every process has exceptions. That is normal. The issue is volume. If exceptions are rare, automation can handle the standard path, and humans can manage the edges. If exceptions are frequent, the process is not stable enough. Trying to automate it too early creates a system full of branches, overrides, and special rules. That kind of complexity usually saves less time than expected and creates far more maintenance than planned. This is why good automation is usually narrow before it becomes broad. It starts with one stable action, one repeatable decision, one predictable handoff, not everything at once. Because automation should reduce operational load, not redistribute it into configuration work. There is also a discipline that many businesses ignore. Automation needs observability. Once a process runs with less human intervention, there must still be a way to notice failure quickly. Not eventually, quickly. If a trigger fails, someone should know. If an output stalls, someone should know. If a condition is wrong, someone should know. Without observability, automation creates delayed awareness. And delayed awareness is expensive. A process can be broken for days, while everyone assumes it is working. That is why strong automation is never just automatic. It is also inspectable. The business must be able to answer, what started this? What happened? What did not happen? Where did it stop? When those answers are available, automation becomes operationally useful. Not because it feels advanced, but because it removes effort from logic that is already understood. That is the real threshold. Automation helps when the process is clear enough to trust, stable enough to repeat, and visible enough to monitor. Before that point, manual work is not inefficiency. It is still part of understanding the system.